fresh on the heels of her own adult ADHD diagnosis, the incredible Allie Payne is joining me this week to discuss what ADHD might look like for your teens and what you can do to help them at home. Welcome to the show, Allie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So first off, I just want to briefly ask, how do you feel after being diagnosed so late in life with ADHD yourself?
I'm going to say validated. I feel validated because this is something I've suspected about myself for some time. And I happened to go one of the very thorough routes and actually have my brain scanned via a SPECT scan in Seattle. And so seeing it on a screen is not only undeniable, it's a little unnerving and again, validating.
Incredible. Okay. Well, now you are sort of uniquely positioned to actually talk about this in teens and how it shows up in teens and what parents can do. So where would you like to start today?
Well, I want to start with, first of all, understanding ADHD in the brain. So it is officially now known as ADHD in the DSM-5, which is the giant book of diagnosis, etc., used in psychiatry and in medicine. It is no longer known as ADD. So I just want to say that's attention deficit hyperactive disorder is the official name. I do want to say that approximately 40% of those people diagnosed actually have the hyperactive component. About 60% do not, which is why so many teens, or even as myself, diagnosed late, it doesn't show up because I got the H part out, the hyperactive part. I was highly athletic. I was in 2 to 3 sports every day and really excelled. So my brain could be calm and compliant in a classroom setting or learning setting because I knew I had outlets coming later. So ADHD struggles with focus and high levels of detail. Okay. Now, I can't say this enough. ADHD is not a choice. It is not it is not a willingness to not pay attention. It is not a super distractibility quality of the brain that if you just tried harder that you wouldn't have this. You can't think away a cardiac diagnosis or disease, can you? Can you just try harder and that wouldn't exist in your heart? Well, you see, you can't do the same thing in the brain. So what I need parents to understand is that your child is literally trying the best they can in a brain that is wired differently. This is not them being non-compliant, lazy, irresponsible, and to the degree you're willing to use those labels, you cannot and will not support your teen.
I have to say though, some of the things you're saying about, ADHD behaviors are teen behaviors. And I feel as if the teen has not had an official diagnosis,
yes,
a parent might be struggling to decide if this is ADHD or normal teen behavior, which
yes,
will require, obviously going to get some sort of assessment
yes,
to determine what it is you're actually dealing with here.
Right. And that's a great point. The teenage brain, the adolescent brain development, for a time has the brain be very inefficient. It's just very inefficient because of the massive amount of growth that is actually happening. So the adolescent brain is not only growing new hardware, but it is writing all the new software to manage that new hardware at the same time. So it becomes extremely inefficient at focus, environmental cues, just kind of very self-centered, if you will, very self-centered and kind of slow at processing details. That is normal, correct. Here's what goes on in the ADHD brain. And again, I had my brain scanned under a couple circumstances, so I actually can prove this now. When an ADHD brain attempts to concentrate, to focus, the irony is blood flow to the concentration centers. The cerebellum, which is here at the back of the brain, and the prefrontal cortex, which is at the front, is removed. It's removed. So the harder they try to concentrate, the less blood flow goes to the concentration centers. That's not their fault. Now, so the teen brain generally, again, inefficient, but an ADHD brain, literally, the harder they try to concentrate, the less they can concentrate, which is why workflow or workloads for an ADHD brain are easily overwhelming, although that can happen in a teen brain as well, and why smaller chunks of work are required for an ADHD brain. So, for instance, set their phone timer for 15 minutes. I know you might be thinking that's ridiculous, but if they get 4 chunks of 15 minutes done, isn't that better than staring at the screen for 2 hours and beating themselves up, telling themselves what a failure they are, how stupid they are, and that they're never going to get it, than just doing 15 minutes at a time? Also, standing. Physical movement, kinesthetic, helps increase blood flow to those focus centers. So if they can have a standing desk or work at a bar ledge or something instead of sitting stationary and focus at a desk, will help an ADHD brain. But you're right, there is a lot of crossover.
It sounds also like it must be physically and mentally exhausting then.
Yes.
To put those intense moments of focus on something, if physically, you're literally forcing your body to work harder. So what other tips do you have for parents then who are dealing with kids who have been diagnosed with ADHD?
Okay, so as I said, you need to understand that their brain is doing the opposite that it's supposed to do. So you have to work within that. So short periods of time that fall under the tripwire of that level of overwhelm. ADHD gets overwhelmed very quickly, and they need very short periods of focus. You can get a lot of 15-minute sections done with a 5-minute break. Activity is imperative. Outdoor, if possible, but 20 minutes a day of activity helps to balance the ADHD brain. ADHD brains often crave carbs. I found this out because the brain is trying to work so hard to do something that it is currently not wiring to do, that it takes more energy. So complex carbs, have good complex carbs as much as possible in the house for snacks. I also sleep. Sleep is imperative for an ADHD brain. And I know that's really hard with teens. I strongly recommend turning off the Wi-Fi or access to certain apps by 11:30 at night, especially on school nights, in order to get significant sleep. I also want you to know that ADHD supplements, natural supplements, I am 2 days into natural supplements and literally already feel better in my brain in a way that is very difficult to describe. It's a stillness that I don't know if I can describe. So anxiety is often quite high. That medication in the ADHD brain, if you're going the prescription medication route, which is fine, can take trial and error. And that ADHD medications lift the dopamine in the brain, which helps with focus and task initiation to start getting things done, but they can lower serotonin in the brain, which can initiate symptoms of depression. So you have to be really careful and vigilant to work with your child's caregiver to be revisiting prescriptions and checking with your teen, because teenagers will often avoid taking ADHD medication. Number one, because they feel that that is literally the confirmation that they're broken, stupid, and will never accomplish anything. That number two, they won't take the medication because it makes them feel numb. They feel numb and nothing. And that is a sign that that's not the right medication, or if the dosage may need to be adjusted. Unfortunately, our brains are very unique, and it is a trial and error thing not to be given up on.
All right. This is really informative for people, but honestly, we don't have enough time in 10 minutes to get to it all. So people are just going to have to chase you down and follow you, because I know you share a lot of information on all of your channels.